The Wes Penra Papers. A Journey Through the Multiverse. The Second Level of Learning. Genesis Paper Number 8, In the Hands of Interdimensional Star Beings by Wes Penra, Thursday, September 13, 2012, http://wespenry.com, Part 2. 4. The Schizophrenic God of the Bible. I described in details in Level I how YHVH was a composite of many different deities, such as Enlil, Ea, Anu, and more. Enlil, of course, was the god of wrath, whom we all shall fear, and who told Abraham to kill his son Isaac to prove his devotion to God. Enlil then stopped him in the last minute. He just wanted to make sure he could trust his chosen human. Enlil as YHVH/Yehovah, was also the one who forced his chosen people to walk for decades in the desert to find their holy land, and he gave Moses the 10 Commandments of "You shall not." Some say the 10 Commandments are really just a watered-down version of the original commandments, which were 500 in number. Enlil wanted to make sure that the Lulus didn't have any other gods beside him. He thus became known as the jealous god. Enlil or Anu was the one who told Joshua to trumpet down the walls of Jericho and kill everybody inside the city, men, women, and children. I've always used this example, but also the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah as proof of an evil God, who orders his chosen people, often Hebrews and Jews, Project Elohim, to go out and kill in his name, while it clearly says in the 10 Commandments that "You shall not kill." Of course, this doesn't count if God tells you to murder someone, because then killing is ordered by a divine being. Often, Christian defenders of Jehovah are telling me that the people, including innocent children, who were killed on God's command deserved it, because they were all evil. So, the babies were evil, too? Oh yes, I forgot. We are all born as sinners. The reader can probably clearly see how screwed up our religions are and how much harm they have done. Not only Christianity, Judaism, and Roman Catholicism, all major religions are huge obstacles to mankind's progress. Only the person who is already on a spiritual path and can distinguish between deception and truth can read the Bible and other sacred texts and extract the truth from the lies and evil teachings. Ea also possessed the God entity YHVH on occasion, and we see a mellower God, but still someone to be worshipped and obeyed. Ea only posed as YHVH when he had something on his mind he wanted people to do. But only in these few above paragraphs it's easy to see how schizophrenic this Judeo-Christian God is, and still so many people think that this is how God should be. Who would seriously want to go to heaven if we have to meet a God like that there? Instead of living in peace in an eternal paradise, we would live in constant fear that God would have a schizophrenic outbreak and kick us all down to hell. My purpose is not to be sacrilegious here, but this whole agenda needs to be exposed for what it is, and people need to wake up, rub their eyes and look at the world in wonder, seeing a whole new reality before their eyes, where there is no God authority who can control their lives. We are all in control of our own lives. We are individuals who are supposed to explore the universe and bring our experiences back to Source, Mother Goddess, so we and she can all learn more about ourselves as individuals and as one. We are supposed to go out and explore the universe, and we should have been able to do so a long time ago, but we have been stopped by the same star beings that a majority of people here on Earth still worship as gods. As long as we do that, we are continuing to build our own trap. The truth is everywhere, but do people really want to see and understand it? Are they willing to break the God spell, a term author and researcher Neil Freer coined? There is no excuse for not knowing anymore. The internet and books and lectures are full with overwhelming evidence of the deception of the major religions. So, the proof is there, now it's just a matter of people being willing to change their belief systems. That's a tough one, but it has to be done. I can't stress that enough, and I will stress it more in later papers. If we don't break the God spell, humankind is doomed. Yes, it's that important. We are stuck here as long as we agree with our oppressors, which we do when we agree with their false religions, education system, banking system, slavery, torture, war, killing, and the list goes on. All these spells need to be broken, or we are in deep trouble. I will definitely talk more about this soon. Many empires have arisen and died over the centuries, and the Roman Empire is probably the one we first come to think of. Much is written about this, and in the context of what has been discussed in these papers so far, it's quite easy to figure out how it's all connected. I mention the Roman Empire here, however, because I want to tell the reader something peculiar, which is not very well known, because it's been erased from history. Homer, of course, told us about giants, minotaurs, sirens, and many other odd beings and creatures in Odysseus, and in Jason and the Golden Fleece we learn about the Minotaur as well. Today, we read these novels as fiction, and they are to a certain degree, but there is also truth in them. I told the reader that some of the giants survived the deluge, and they were indeed still alive during the Roman Empire. For some time, they were used by the Romans in war, as builders etc., but eventually, most of them were killed off, although there are stories about giants as recent as 500 years ago*. Are they still alive today? Yes, but perhaps not of the size they once were. For those who are interested, I highly recommend Steve Quayle's website, http://www.stevequayle.com/, which specifically talks about giant in history and present time. Brian Forster is another excellent source. He is an archaeologist and is studying the giant skulls, particularly those found in Peru. 5. Jesus of Nazareth, Mary Magdalene, and the Knights Templar. I am not going to spend too much time on Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and the Knights Templar, but there are a few things I would like to bring up on this subject. Yes, Jesus, not his real name, of course, existed, was married and had children, and his bloodline still exists today. However, it's not Jesus' male bloodline that is important to the global elite, but the female bloodline of Jesus' offspring. Many families of the ruling elite claim to be direct descendants of Mary Magdalene, Jesus' alleged wife. The foremost task of the Knights Templar was to protect the Holy Grail, which was the bloodline of Mary Magdalene. They also had other, more overt tasks, such as safeguarding travelers to the Holy Land, but they were just fronts for the public. There are those who say Jesus never existed and is just a composite of beings who were born on the same date, lived a similar life, died on a cross, and was resurrected. This is true in certain terms, but that is just one way of looking at it. Jesus, as a being of flesh and blood, did exist around the time the Bible suggests, but he was perhaps not the person we think he was, the Son of God. In fact, which God are we talking about? Also, how much of Jesus' teachings are unaltered, and how much was excluded? Were the most revealing parts taken out from the Bible? Absolutely. At the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, Constantine decided to put the Bible together. He inspired people to come to him with all sacred scriptures they had and leave them with him. Constantine found his abode overwhelmingly full of ancient text, cuneiform and other kinds of scriptures. And there was a lot about Jesus of Nazareth and Mary Magdalene, and the true story of the two. However, the Roman Emperor Constantine wanted a unified religion which everybody could follow so he could more easily control the population. Hence, he excluded the majority of the most important scriptures and decided to publish the less significant ones. At that moment, lots of true history was lost, although some of these texts have recently been found, such as the Book of Enoch and the Dead Sea Scrolls. But still, in the Bible there is a lot of valid and important information left, because neither Constantine, nor the rest of the Council of Wise Men understood what these scriptures were all about. Many terms were unfamiliar to them, so they thought they were not important and published them. Fortunately, this still makes the Bible a resource for the historian, to a much lesser degree than it could have, but still important enough to consider being one source among many. Although the religion of Mother Goddess had been more or less outlawed for the common people, and its secret followers on and off were hunted down and killed by the establishment, it never really stopped being practiced. There were witches who still remembered some of the procedures and rituals, and how to heal people with plants, herbs, vegetables, and fruits from the living library, but they had to practice their religion away from society. Some didn't let themselves being intimidated and still practiced the Aryan religion openly, but institutions like the Catholic Church chased them down and burned them at the stake, often just from hearsay. In today's world, little do people understand that the same institution, the Roman Catholic Church, which burned witches and shamans on the stake, practiced the same religion they condemned behind closed doors. Even now, the Catholic Church is worshipping Mother Mary higher than Jesus Christ. They understand the importance of the female bloodline. And after all they've done, Roman Catholicism is the biggest religion on earth. What a joke that would be if it wasn't so serious. The Knights Templar found something very valuable and stunning underneath the floor in Solomon's temple. There was a hidden passage that led down underground and ended in a big room which had been used for practicing the religion of the Mother Goddess and the Divine Feminine. This shows that the men of power indeed know that the universe is feminine, and rituals devoted to the Mother Goddess have been extremely important for the ruling elite. And why is that? Because that's of course where the power lies, and that's the key to conquering the 96%. Newer research shows that Jesus actually didn't die on the cross, and it's easy to find material these days, showing that he and Mary traveled west and settled down in France, and they both lived a long life and had children. I am not going to go into details about that either, because detailed information can be found elsewhere, but this is the whole thing with the power struggle between the global elite, who is of the purest Jesus line, or rather, the female line. Now, if we think about it, who can Jesus have been? And who would have any interest in letting a seemingly ethical and just being come down to earth and spread his message? Let's say that the Syrians wanted unity, they wanted to bring the peoples of the earth under one umbrella through religion. What would they do, and whom would they choose to do it? Well, with all we know, we don't have to be overly clever to figure it out. What are the most supernatural things we know about Jesus? We know he was born from a virgin and his mother was Maria, Mary. Who else goes under the name, or title, Mary? The Mother Goddess does. And who is representing Mother Goddess in the 4% universe? The Queen of the Stars, i.e. the Orion Queen. Furthermore, who was born from a virgin? Enkivs. Ea, because he was born from an unfertilized egg. And there we have it. The Virgin is the Queen of the Stars and the son who was born without a father was Ea. So, Jesus was from Orion, in other words, working for the Syrians. Ea as Jesus did a good job, he managed to get a lot of followers. Not so much during his lifetime, but I don't think that was the purpose, either. Ea's task was to spread a godlike message to the people that they could relate to and take to heart. Then it was for those who came after him to sort out what was to be published and what was not, hence the Council of Nicaea etc. And how do we know that Ea/Jesus worked together with the Syrians? Why couldn't it be that he actually broke out because he regretted what he'd done and now tried to set the records straight? Well, we know he was working with the Syrians because he was promoting a masculine god, he was a messenger for the patriarchal regime. And there was another reason Ea was chosen for the role of Jesus as well, he was known to be a great teacher, because he was the one who had taught the early, enhanced humans about the religion of the Mother Goddess, shamanism and the sacred rituals of fire as Lucifer, the light bearer, bearer of knowledge. He was the best man to do it. Also, he didn't have the typical bad temper, attributed to the Syrian overlords. He had patience, well, sometimes. I want to leave it with this and let the reader ponder it. Read the New Testament and see if the puzzle pieces fit together, I bet they do. Questions will arise, but do your best to put them in perspective and see if you can figure out how it's all connected. You may find it very interesting. Then I would suggest reading the book, Holy Blood, Holy Grail by Begant, Lee, and Lincoln, and you'll learn more about Jesus' life after the so-called crucifixion. If you want to study even more, look into Sir Lawrence Gardner's work on the Grail bloodline, the Dragon line, Starfire, and Mary Magdalene. None of these sources tells the whole story, but maybe you can when you've studied them? 6. Keeping us in the dark. The world was heading for quite some barbarian times after EA's faked death on the cross, and all the way through the American Revolution. History was rewritten many times, starting long before Jesus' birth, by Syrian gods, who were fighting for power. Both Enlil and Marduk were guilty of erasing history, both wanting to be the one in charge. And to convince the human population that this was how it was supposed to be, that they were the only god, they had to erase the traces of earlier gods. Memories had to be erased, both on the planet and in the astral, in the between lives area, blat, and time had to be reset. As we touched on earlier, after Christianity was created by the Syrian overlords and their human minions, it came down hard on those who were still pagan and practiced the mother goddess religion. If Christianity was going to become a success in the civilized world, paganism had to go. Therefore, the Catholic Church started a witch hunt on females who connected with nature and the divine feminine. So they possessed the fire? Well, let them burn in fire, then. Was the conclusion the papacy came to, while they themselves were dedicated to paganism and the goddess religion behind the scenes. Women of fire were burned in fire at the stake in these very dark ages where next to no spirituality had the chance to survive. Everybody had to concentrate on their very immediate survival and didn't have time for spiritual contemplations on their own. The Syrian overlords, on the other hand, never walked around hungry. They had huge meals every second of the day, feeding off an enormous amount of fear. In the meantime, there was an election being run on A.am.e, according to AR in his ebook, The Link. This was an ongoing process, which started before Jesus was born. King Anu was stepping down as the king of A.am.e, and the first democratic election on the planet was held. This was in the 700s to 800s AD. All Syrians apparently left planet Earth to participate in this historic event, and Earth was left solely in the hands of the global elite. Even Marduk left, but was afterwards banned from A.am.e. We know from level I that the new king, and Anu's successor, was Nannar, Enlil's son. Nannar is still king of A.am.e up until this day, according to AR. We will discuss the A.am.e contradictions in a later paper. After the election was over, some Syrians returned to our planet. They had realized, before they left for A.am.e, that Christianity by itself wouldn't unite all people, and that they still needed conflicts. So one day in 610 AD, a 40-year-old man named Muhammad had a revelation, and with his conviction he managed to unite Islam, which became a widespread religion, perfect to use as a catalyst whenever needed. Other religions were created as well, all built on old pagan traditions in a new package. Wars and unrest became the name of the day for centuries. In Europe, the dream of a new Atlantis started taking form, and prominent secret societies, such as the Rosicrucian Order under Sir Francis Bacon, and Freemasonry, worked in unison behind the scenes to make this happen. They, of course, knew about America long before Columbus. Cortés and other European explorers were just forerunners, making sure that the continent in the west, which had been chosen to become the new Atlantis, was cleansed from savages, and that gold and other valuable things changed ownership and landed in the right hands. The American East Coast had once been part of Atlantis, something these secret societies were well aware of, and now they wanted to rebuild the empire of the gods, and they started preparing for their return. They never really left, however, and the skeleton crew, which is still here in the physical, is led by Marduk and his sons, apparently. Still, there are many Syrians and other non-physicals in other dimensions who pull the strings behind the scenes of the powers that be. Behind the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and the Russian Revolution, were not only Freemasonry and the Rosicrucians, but also another secret society, formed by a Jesuit priest, Adam Weishaupt in Bavaria in southern Germany. The name of his group became known as the Illuminati, and consisted of the most brilliant thinkers of their time. When this secret group was revealed, they were banned in Germany, and the members had to flee. However, there were founding fathers of the United States of America who were in continuous contact with Weishaupt and his group, something that is shown in letters which were found after the United States was established. Thomas Jefferson was one of those who were close friends of Weishaupt's. Letter correspondence exists between the two. The Illuminati and Freemasonry were the two driving forces behind the American Revolution, and the most prominent founding fathers were Freemasons, and others were tightly connected with the group. Only a few rejected Freemasonry. Both these secret societies exist today. The history of the world's secret societies and how the global elite is connected through a worldwide network of those organizations is discussed in enormous detail on my website, Illuminati News, http://illuminati-news.com, so I will not go into a whole lot about that here, but the official reason why the American Revolution happened in the first place was to break free from the British monarchy, which people thought was oppressive. However, we now know that America has never been free from British influence, and the monarchy is still very much in charge behind the scenes. The United States are not the land of the free. There is no such thing on this planet as a free country. Since humankind, the way we know ourselves, were created, there hasn't been a land of the free, except perhaps Lemuria for a period of time, but even Mu was part of a bigger conspiracy, so their freedom was also to some degree an illusion. As long as the Syrian alliance is still present on Earth, there will be no land of the free. The only real difference between ancient times and the world we live in now is that the gods are not present among us. They are still here but are not showing themselves openly anymore. They have become invisible controllers, and we think that all the bad things that happen on the planet are due to human behavior. This is not true. We have the DNA of the Syrians, but we also have the DNA from the Mother Goddess, and that's where human compassion, love, caring, and helpfulness comes from. The rest, unfortunately, are Syrian traits we have inherited, but also have gained from manipulation and mind control. Humankind without the Syrian alliance would be a very different species. We would see the best sides of ourselves develop rapidly, because they are predominant. Look around you and see. People in general want to do good, they are friendly, helpful, compassionate, and loving. In general, people don't want to hurt each other. But what about school shootings, assassination, and war? Yes, but if we really study it and research it, we will find a common denominator. The perpetrators were either under the influence of mind-altering drugs, or heavy mind control. Either way, we can trace their behavior back to mind control. Someone used these people for some evil purposes, they did not do what they did by their own free will, they were manipulated. Still, isn't it a little paranoid to blame it all on the Syrian alliance? We humans are certainly no angels either, some might say. And if they are Christians, they would justify it by saying that we were born sinners, so our behaviors make sense. The perpetrators are of the devil. To this I would say that if the Syrians had left this planet alone and let the Aryan experiment evolve on its own, we would not have these problems. And I dare say that although the Syrians manipulated us the way they did, if they then left us alone, we would still become a compassionate species who would reach the stars. We are about 7 billion people in this world, so of course there are those who would do counter-survival things to others in such a crowd, but humanity in general would evolve just fine. We are souls in a body. We are trapped in matter, although we don't have to be. There is nothing wrong with the material world, what's wrong is to keep people trapped and prevent them from reaching out to the other dimensions. And this is what the Syrian alliance has done. Syrians, Alpha Draconians, Pleiadians, Andromedans, you name it. Factions of all these alien groups, and more, are part of the Syrian alliance and work towards a common goal to become the rulers of the universe. And they want to make sure we help them to reach that goal, and they are going to see to that they get our consent. How will they do that? The way they always have, through manipulation. No one can really help us except ourselves. So long as we agree with the Syrians and are willing to help them, which we are by buying into their manipulation and by adjusting to their fear-based system, we are not free, and we are participating in their universal crime and become guilty by association. We need to claim our sovereignty, and we need to do it now. This is not a farce or something we can read about just to get a thrill. This is about you and I, our future, and the future of our children and grandchildren. We can act and make a difference, or we can remain passive and support the criminals. It's our choice. If we choose the first option, it will lead towards freedom, and if we choose the second, it will lead to our very destruction, both as individuals and as a human species. Ponder what that really means already now, because in a few papers away we are going into details about the real consequences of the choices we make, how we make them, consciously and unconsciously, and how sloppy thinking needs to go out the window, because it leads to our demise. Clarity of thought, intention, and action is what is going to declare our sovereignty for the first time in history. It's time to reach for the stars. There are friendly beings out there, waiting for us to join them. And they are waiting, impatiently. Some of them in sadness, not knowing if we are going to make it or not. There are those who think we won't. We need to prove them wrong. This is the last paper in the Genesis series. We will now quickly move up to present time and discuss what we have learned so far, and the implications of it all. It is a sobering awakening, it was for me. The solution is simple in concept, but the difficult part is to get people to apply it. We need the numbers, and 7 billion people will suit our purpose. We are all part of a mass consciousness, the supermind of humankind, our species, and we affect each other by our thoughts and beliefs. There is evidence that if 3% of a species are moving in the same direction, the rest will follow. 3% is our goal, that is what we're aiming for. And I am not talking about recruitment and attempts to convince people to think in a certain way, spending hours forcing ideas on them. If we do, we become manipulators, too. No, the work we need to do has to be done from inside ourselves. It's an inner, spiritual work, and it has to be done. The human soul group is beautiful. Once we're free, we have a lot to contribute with to the galactic community, and those waiting for us know that. It's time to reclaim our home, it's time we release ourselves and break down the invisible prison walls. I wouldn't write these papers if I didn't think it can be done. Thank you for have followed me this far. We still have some way to go, so I hope you will stay with me.